doesn't take seriously the idea that you've got to trust people in communities organised to kind of manage their own lives and to control institutions which exist around them. So kind of, you know, Cameron talks, you know, the reality of the big society is a series of strands which actually don't mean very much. They mean kind of sort of decentralising planning from one level of local power to another. In effect, it means you know, a little bit more of money for kind of volunteering, and it means something else as well, which is equally insubstantial. I think the Tories are the centralisers. I think the Tories have always been the centralisers. I think the way we attack them is by decentralising and actually say, well, we're going to do some of the things that you actually are talking about, but you aren't willing to do, like mutualise public services. The second way is that they're not interested in institutions, and they don't understand that public institutions that exist now are things that have a history, that people care about, that people have affection for, and they just want more power over them, and they want to make them more democratic. You know, actually, the Tories have quite a hard. Think that the boundary between the state and society is actually quite hard. There is no such thing. There is such a thing as society. It's just not the same thing as the state. Well, I don't think that's what we should be saying. What we should be saying is that the state and society intermingle, that the state as a social, exists within society. It's made up of the ways in which people organise their lives. And that means actually kind of taking seriously the role of, you know, of ordinary people to kind of run their own library, kind of, you know, et cetera, with public funding, perhaps. So it's about kind of, if you like, empowerment within public institutions rather than just, you know, handing everything outside of the public sector.
Okay, that's great. We'll turn to questions now. Chap there in the blue jumper and with the beard. Do we need is there a microphone going around, or are we just shouting out? I mean, as I understand that, Neal, that chimes quite closely of some of what you were saying about the importance of, you know, in the phrase voice as well as choice in public services. But to play devil's advocate for a minute, you know, where there's been less market mechanisms, hasn't there, in Scotland and Wales, and people say that waiting lists are a bit higher up there. And should we trust, can we in a kind of post-deferential society still trust the professions to have the patient's best interest in heart, or do you think they'll be out for themselves?
Well, let me say, first of all, that I think this debate so far has been far too polite. I think we're in the worst of all worlds, actually. You know, we've got a big state trying to micromanage neoliberalism. You know, the meddling growth in order just to kind of pull levers to make small differences. I wouldn't mind if we had a big state that really did take on the banks. That would be fantastic. That would be really good. You know, we haven't got that. Neither have we got a state that trusts people, will let go and give them the kind of opportunity, because of course people should have voice. Look, there are 4 elements in the ways in which the state can be run. You know, there is voice, which is the biggest thing. That's the thing that we should really be pushing and really extending the boundaries of, about democratic engagement and participation. There's that. You know, there's the professionalism. Of course there is an ethic of public service. You know, one that we should respect, support through training, through education, through standards, etc. But that should be bounded. You know, Harold Shipman was a professional, but he wasn't a great one. You know, so we need to bound that. You know, the second bit, or the third bit, is centralism. We do want as much equality as possible, and we have to direct that from the centre. That's an element of it, but it's only an element of it. And the fourth one is we want diversity because we want people to be involved. It's how you put that package together that works, you know. And I just see a Labour Party that, you know, there's one lot want to go back in so they can call it diversity but just get Serco back in, and there's another lot who want to just get in there because they want to micromanage and they think they've learned the lessons of, you know, how do you do tax credits last time and tweak it and do it a bit better. And both of them are absolutely hopeless, and we need a revolution in the way in which we view the state and our involvement in it.
And you don't think at all that the, if you think of a conversation, whatever we want to call it, with, say, patients in something like the health service, foundation trusts have these kind of strange boards or whatever of citizens, are they really going to be able to stand up to consultants and say what's best for patients?
But that was just a whitewash to get the, you know, to get the legislation through that Anna Milburn put on at the last minute. There is no real democracy or accountability. It's the chief executives that run the trusts, you know, not the people. This to be proper democracy. You know, the democracy where you get sacked if you do something wrong because the people vote to sack you. If GPs were elected by their patients every year, they'd do a much better job than the one that they're doing. Democracy has real power. It puts you on the spot. It holds you to account. It's a much stronger driver than either the old politics of the machine or the kind of slightly newer politics of the market. Democracy is more effective. We need to make it run deep and hard through our public services.
And just finally on this, on the example of GPs, I mean, of course, patients can vote with their feet, and they have been able to, since the 1940s, go and get another GP.
The rich people vote with their feet, the ones who can move their house, the ones with a car. It's the people who can't do that, who haven't got the sharp elbows. They're the ones that are left behind when services are residualised through that kind of exit of the middle classes, and we can't allow that to happen.
OK, come to the chap at the front there in the red T-shirt. Please talk really loud, just because we've no mics. OK. Tim, just because you were talking about civil liberties, I wondered, is it worth you just picking up on this idea of the state as a more diffuse thing? And then we've got this paradox. Most people here think they want more democracy, more public involvement. But sometimes with questions of civil liberties, it's the less democratic bits of the state, notably the judiciary, that we fall back on to protect us.
Yeah, I mean, complicated questions. I think you're right. I mean, it depends what we mean by democracy, I think. A lot of questions, I mean, it's great if people participate in them, but they're not yes-no referendums. You know, running services, delivering justice is an issue that requires deliberation and discussion amongst people, where you might have to change your mind. These are complex interactions, and the idea that we can, I mean, going back to Neal's point, run services in that way, well, I've no doubt there are more routes for users' voice, but the idea that we can run them in using democratic mechanisms, I'm not so sure, particularly in areas that require a lot of expertise. I also question whether people really have the appetite to get involved in that way. I mean, I wish I did live in a world where people wanted to get more involved. Every year the Hansard Society does a poll. It says, which of these actions would you be prepared to do to express your opinion on an issue important to you? The only one that more than 50% of people say is sign a petition. I mean, that is a disgrace. But, you know, that is the world we live in. Only a small number of people will actually get involved, and in a poll, some of them are probably lying as well. So I think there's, yes, I'm all for voice. I think there's some complications with that. I mean, on the civil liberties issue, yes, I mean, it is very complicated. I don't feel in a position to work that set of issues through there. What I would just say is this, I mean, on tax avoidance, I mean, I was sorry I wasn't here this morning. We had those inspiring people from UK Uncut, who I've been hearing about. You know, it's funny there that the most kind of active social movement, protest, is about enforcing government rules. You know, you looked at those pictures after the march with Oxford Street smashed up, and someone had graffitied "pay your tax" on a wall. And we've got an anarchist movement in the UK urging corporations to pay their tax. You know, it's a funny old world.
Just very quickly, Paul, I'll take another question in just a moment, but what about this point? Was it Oscar Wilde who said the problem with socialism is it means too many public meetings in the evening?
Too many evenings, yeah. Well, the evidence is that where you do give people power and they genuinely can affect an outcome by getting actively involved, it doesn't matter what their level of education is, their level of income is, they will step forward. When you do it in a false way that just soaks up all of that idealism and turns it into bureaucracy and bureaucratizes them, they drop away. So the answer is not to not do it, the answer is to do it properly. Look at Porto Alegre in Brazil with all these wonderful forms of direct and participative democracy. You know, some of the very poorest people on the face of the planet have stepped up over 20 years to create a local democracy that directs services and all the rest of it. So I think if you build it, they will come. And I'm afraid I'm not being rude about Fabians, you know, I am one, but there is a sort of Fabian-ish attitude, which is that, well, people can't be bothered, they're all too tired, they'd rather veg out, leave it all to us, they say. We'll look after you, don't you worry. And that old school kind of social democracy, I think, isn't good enough in the kind of market economy that Neal is decrying. So, you know, I think there is a role for democracy. The state, by the way, is not inherently democratic at all. You can have undemocratic states. We saw plenty of those and still have plenty of those today. So this question of how you democratise the state, how you genuinely pass power, I would argue through the cooperative and mutual model as much as anything else, is vital. But don't dismiss people's willingness and capacity for amazing things.
Okay, let's take three together now, just try and get through a few more. So, lady in the red at the front, and then chap in the maroon jumper there, and then guy in the grey and pink shirt.
Hi, my name is Caroline. Oh, hi, my name is Carolina. I'm with the Fabian Women's Network. I'm Swedish, and I've lived in the UK for the past 5 years, and I think as Swedish, I'm naturally born to be pro-state and left of centre really from the start. And,
even now?
Sorry?
Even now?
Even now, absolutely. And I would say that I strongly believe with what Tim was saying earlier, that the state really can be empowering. England has, 4-to-1 women represented in Parliament. We have 50%, and a lot of that is because Sweden allows women to work in a way and progress in their careers that England just doesn't. We have free childcare from the age of 1, complete free. You can work full time. You can work within the degree, the field that you actually studied in. You can actually get the career you wanted, not being somebody's PA from 9 to 3 because the kids have to be picked up at 3:30. You can actually study for a reason. And it really doesn't come even from a feminist point of view. I would never have classed myself as a feminist until I moved here. It comes from I swear, seriously, it comes from a common sense point of view. 2 salaries are better than 1. You see it as both parents in a family have a joint financial responsibility towards that family. It's not about equality even. You don't really have that conversation about whether or not you should work after you have kids. It really isn't part of that conversation. And in addition to that, this whole kind of, we should be protectionist, it's all about England, it's all about Sweden, it's all about your own individual country, anti-European Union. Sweden as a nation, we're much smaller than you, and we pay, I think, either the highest or at least top 5 in terms of EU fee. And we're very pro-EU anyway. We pay the most, and we're very pro-EU, and we take a lot. I think we're the top 5 as well in terms of immigration figures. And I think, the state can definitely be empowering, and I would say that there's no real reason why Sweden would be better in terms of the statistics than England. I think that I really don't understand why England is so behind on this.
Okay, let's pass the mic round and just take 2 more quickly.
My name's Duncan Bowie. I'm a member of Compass and a member of the Fabian Executive. I just wanted to raise a couple of points. Firstly, some of the discussion about the state has implied it is a single centralised body. Any organisation which has statutory powers or what level it is part of the state, whether it's your local parish councillor or a ward councillor, up to the mayor, up to central government and MPs. The critical issues are at what level are decisions best taken, how you actually have the representative control over the actual functions of the state and the officials, and basically the relationship between citizens at all those levels and the different elements of the state. The more we can encourage participation at all levels, the better. The second point I want to make, which is in a sense confirming what Tim said, which other people seem to have rather failed to recognise, is it's absolutely essential that we actually have a strong central state. Otherwise, you cannot tackle anything to do with taxation, redistribution, dealing with spatial inequities. You cannot do it from the bottom up because basically certain areas and certain people have more power than others, more wealth, more access to facilities. What the Tories are doing with Lib Dem support is not just transferring powers from a central level to a local level, they're taking powers and responsibilities outside the democratic system through the localism bill, the idea that each neighbourhood can self-determine its own future, better off neighbourhoods with resources will do things that low-income neighbourhoods are unable to do. The state is absolutely essential. We need to tackle the Conservatives and the Lib Dems on this is not localism, this is actually supporting those with wealth against those without wealth. A state at different levels has different functions. It's no point arguing for the state or against the state, it's the way the state works. Just to point out that some of the leading French anarchists from the 1870s went on to become municipal socialists.
Fantastic, thank you very much. And just one more there, please.
I'm Mehdi Hassan from the New Statesman. Just a couple of quick points. One is, isn't the key challenge for the left in the current debate about the state not to just automatically cede ground to the Conservatives, who are actually out to shrink the state, and I don't mean Cornwall, in very vicious and in very deep